Hey everyone, my name is Crystal Lazeny, and I got the topic of step families. I thought I would take a lesson from our professor and copy what he did, so I'm just going to record myself going through this PowerPoint. I know I get a lot out of his PowerPoint, so I hope you guys get a lot out of this too. Just some statistics for you guys. In the United States, 50% of all married couples do end up getting divorced. So if you get married in this country, you have about a 50-50 chance of making it. A high rate of those couples who get divorced do get remarried within 4 years, and then those couples who do get remarried are 10% more likely to get divorced again than those who are married for the first time. I would imagine these statistics vary based on your culture or religion, but just an overarching statistic, 50% of couples in the United States do get divorced. So some facts for you guys about step families. Half of all children who have divorced parents will be introduced to a new step parent within 4 years. As I mentioned in the previous slide, within 4 years, people who get divorced tend to get remarried. And obviously some of those couples have children, so those children are exposed to a new step parent. More children in elementary school are likely to have divorced parents than those children who are in preschool or infants. It obviously takes time to get married, have children, go through whatever part of your marriage that led to the divorce, get divorced. So it would make sense that children are typically a little bit older when they do have divorced parents. Only 1/3 of step families stay remarried, and then most step families happen because of divorce rather than a death of a parent. So a few different types of step families. There are stepfather step families, stepmother step families, and then blended or complex step families. So a stepfather step family is when the mother has custody of the children and gets remarried, introducing a stepfather into the family. A stepmother family is when there is a stepmother involved. So basically the father has custody of the children and then brings a new spouse into the marriage, creating a stepmother. I shared this picture of Ross and Ben because I figured a lot of you guys would know who Ross and Ben were, but I just wanted to point out in this show, he and his ex-spouse had joint custody, but he did have custody of his children, Ben, and did eventually introduce Ben to a couple stepmothers. If you guys watch Friends at all, you know that. And then there are blended or complex families. Basically, that is when both adults bring children from previous marriages into a step family. If you guys have seen the movie Blended with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, gives lots of examples of blended families. So some positives of step families, children do tend to adjust over time to their step family versus at the beginning of the creation of a step family, the marriage of a new family. That makes sense. That I would imagine that children are still mourning the loss of the parent or the separation of their parents, and it's a big adjustment to get used to a new parent or new siblings, and it takes time, but statistically they do adjust and they do well. Children do function better in step families versus conflictual families, meaning those children who are in step families do a lot better with their happy parents versus fighting parents and conflicting families. I shared this picture of yours, mine, and ours where it's an example of a blended family, but you can tell in this movie that they're functioning pretty well. 75% of all children in step families say that they are either close or very close with their step parents. So I can attest to that. I know my dad is my older brother's stepdad, and they are definitely closer with my dad than they are their own dad. So it they can have good relationships. It's not always a dramatic event. Some negatives of step families. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Step Brothers, but it definitely showed some negatives in that movie. Children in simple step families, meaning they only have a stepmother or stepfather, adjust better than children in blended families, which makes sense because their children in simple step families are obviously only adjusting to one new person versus children in blended families are adjusted to basically a whole new family. So it makes sense that it would be easier to adjust to one person than a few. And then children in step families do show more adjustment issues than children who do not have divorced parents or do not have parents in blended or step families. Um, the book was clear to mention that not all children in step families do show adjustment issues. They are just more likely to. And then, as I mentioned earlier, only 1/3 of step families stay together. So even if they do adjust to their new step parent or step family, the chances of them staying with that family are kind of low. So I did want to add a works cited slide in here. I got all of this information from the book. None of it is my own. So if you guys are curious where I got this information, it's from page 240 and 241 in our textbook. After doing this presentation, I did read up a little bit more on this topic. It's a very interesting topic, and I think something cool to learn about. I will say this, I've been married for 5 years, and I know my marriage is still kind of in the infant stage, but it makes sense that only 50% of couples stay married. Um, I think just the culture that we live in, the society that we live in, kind of romanticizes marriage. And while a marriage should be romantic, that's definitely not all that it is. And people get a huge dose of real life once that honeymoon ends. So even before that honeymoon ends. And it makes sense how there can be a lot of issues that lead to divorce. People are learning how to communicate with each other, how to live with each other, how they want to raise their kids, where to go to dinner on Saturday night. There are just so many things that get thrown on a couple. So it makes sense that only half of them make it. I think just the day and age we live in, we're going to experience and be exposed to all different types of families. And there's nothing wrong with not being a typical family. It's not always going to be mom, dad, kids, and that's how it stays. I know I came from a not typical family, and so did my husband, and we learned a lot from it, from seeing how our parents dealt with that situation. So I definitely think there's positive and negatives to both, and it's just how it is. But yeah, I hope you guys read up more on it. It's definitely an interesting topic, but that's the end of my presentation. So talk to you later. Bye. I don't know. What do you say at the end of a presentation? See ya.